My name is John Mandyck. I'm the CEO of Urban Green Council and your host today for Urban Green Live. This is a program series where I interview experts to understand how we get to a net zero carbon future, and you get to participate too, because we'll have live Q&A in just a bit. So today I'm really excited about our topic. We're going to do a deep dive into the green economy. What is it? What jobs are needed? And what does that mean for buildings? So my guest today is Nse Esema. Nse, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Nse is the Senior Vice President of the Green Economy team at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, also known as EDC. She's here to help unpack EDC's new Green Economy Action Plan that was just released and is fascinating. So Nse, welcome to Urban Green Live.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're so happy that you're with us. Before we kind of jump into your action plan and your report, which is very complete, why don't you just start helping ground the audience a little bit? Tell us about what is EDC? What is your mission? What do you all do there?
Sure thing. Yeah. So again, thanks so much for joining us today. Really delighted to be able to be in conversation with you, and especially excited to get to the Q&A section too, to sort of hear what's on the minds of a broad range of stakeholders. So EDC is the city's economic development arm. We are incorporated technically as a nonprofit, but work under kind of massive contracts with the city. We are tasked with, at the mission level, building a vibrant, inclusive, and globally competitive economy throughout New York City. And so we do that in kind of a variety of ways. We have sort of 4 remits that we often talk about. We're focused on strengthening business confidence. And so that means we keep a regular pulse on the New York City economy, report out on it at sort of a monthly cadence, have a economic trends report that we put out monthly that we invite folks to subscribe to. We serve as the front door to the private sector, so we have a partnerships team that really can provide lots of bespoke services to businesses that are looking to enter this market or sort of scale their footprint here. So that's sort of in the strengthening business confidence. We engage a lot with industry to make sure that we have a close pulse on like what are the concerns coming from the business sector. Our second remit is really around building neighborhoods. So we engage in large scale building. We in Sunset Park, for example, in South Brooklyn, we manage directly over 200 acres of waterfront property there. We are building Willets Point in Queens. We are building the new Sparks Kips Bay neighborhood in Manhattan. And so we really engage in kind of big, large scale projects. Alongside sort of that remit of building neighborhoods, a sort of connected but still sort of distinct pillar is around delivering sustainable infrastructure that supports citywide economic development. So for anyone who's taken the New York City ferry, that's us. EDC manages that. For folks who have taken advantage of the greenways in the city, that's us, right? The Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Project, we're building that. My personal favorite, the High Line, that's EDC, right? So and then finally, kind of our fourth remit, which is a bit of where the Green Economy Action Plan really emerges from, is we are focused on growing innovation sectors in New York City with a focus on equity. And so that's where my work and my team in this Green Economy Action Plan kind of most fits into. Our innovation sectors, as we've defined it, are the green economy, which is not just one industry, and we'll talk more about what that actually means over the course of this conversation, life science and tech. So I'll just pause there.
Wow, that's a lot. I already learned a lot in the first 5 minutes. So, thank you. So maybe just a little bit of color. What are the size and scope of EDC projects? You already gave us a little hint there, but how many building projects do you actually touch in a year?
Yeah.
Or how do you measure that?
Yeah, for sure. So our toolkit is really broad, right? And so we're a real estate owner, manager, and developer. So we have a portfolio of over 63 million square feet of real estate assets that we manage on behalf of the city. So that's across 230 properties. And it ranges, right, from like the ground lease at Times Square to, again, like the industrial campuses that I mentioned in South Brooklyn. We manage a construction budget of $9 billion in infrastructure over the next 10 years. And we have an internal capital team that engages in a lot of this capital construction work. Some of it is sort of directly on behalf of EDC, and some of it is on behalf of agencies across the city. And so at any given moment, we have 70 to 100 capital projects underway. And so that's just kind of on the built environment property piece. But in addition to kind of that granular sort of toolkit, we're also funding and managing programs to support innovation and industry development and equitable access. We manage a $1 billion investment in the life science industry, a $200 million investment to support offshore wind. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we dig into the Green Economy Action Plan piece. We provide incentives to the private sector through various financial products and strategic contracting. And then finally, we can also like facilitate government collaboration through pilots. So just in terms of like kind of going from those broad goals, right? So like what's in our toolkit? Those are some of the like concrete tools we have.
Right. So let's dive right into that report. EDC just released its breakthrough report on the green economy. In fact, New York City is taking the lead in actually defining the green economy itself, which I found really cool in the report. So let's just start right there. How important was it to define the green economy? And then just more broadly, what do you hope that the report will do?
Yeah, sure thing. So, I mean, we can't measure something until we have like sort of clearly defined it, right? We can't kind of galvanize action around shifting, scaling, diversifying any parts of our economy, any parts of anything really, until we've like clearly defined it. And so for us, it felt really fundamental to define the sectors and the subsectors that comprise the green economy. That helps to also focus the city's efforts. And I want to flag that, you know, that report was a big collaboration between the New York City Economic Development Corporation and the Mayor's Office for Workforce and Talent. And so it's really a all of city policy vision and action plan. So just want to make that addition. But, you know, in defining the sectors and subsectors that are part of the green economy, we're then able to operate from that sort of box, right? And being able to say, okay, so this is the size of the green economy now. This is where it could get to, you know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. These are the specific sectoral investments that we can make to actually help to bring those projections to fruition, right? So there's the answer to that first piece of like why that definitional exercise was really important. But then to kind of take a step back to your bigger question, which is like, what do we want this report to do? You know, this is a real first of its kind roadmap. There are, in addition to, I should also mention like being kind of one of the first places where green economy is like so clearly defined for New York City. And that also being an exercise most cities have not undertaken because it can be very challenging. The action plan also outlines a roadmap with a set of strategies and commitments that the city's making to grow our green economy sectors. And so that's a key part of the report. Part of what we hope to see is that this report will galvanize action and move us towards our vision, which is that New York City's green economy will host nearly 400,000 jobs by 2040. That's about 7% of our economy and, you know, our forecasted economy at that point. That's the size of the tech. That's actually a little bit larger than our tech ecosystem right now, right? And so we want to get to that number and scale of jobs becoming the anchor of a prosperous, equitable, and just future for New Yorkers. So we're really focused on kind of how we do it too, right? Not just getting to those jobs without a real focus on prosperity, equity, and a just transition. And so, yeah, that's really kind of what's behind that's what we hope the report, all of the intense analysis in there and the commitments in there can help us drive towards.
Excellent. So tell us, Nse, how do buildings or the building sector fit within the green economy? Like, what role
Yeah.
will buildings play?
Yeah, so buildings are a major part of the green economy, right? So the largest sector. So in the report, we lay out 8 sectors and 21 subsectors. And thank you so much for dropping the link in the chat. Really, really encourage you to look at it, to review it. We tried to make it as sort of interesting visually and you know, friendly to readers as possible. But we lay out 8 sectors, which are 5 sectors that really need to decarbonize if we're going to reach our ambitious climate goals as a city, right? And so we're talking about buildings, which I imagine many people on this call know well, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. We lay out transportation, our energy system, consumer products and waste as sort of 5 sectors where we need to decarbonize. And then we also lay out kind of enabling sectors, finance and consulting, policy and advocacy that help to drive decarbonization across those sectors. And then, of course, this is New York. You know, we live in the legacy of the post-Sandy legacy and just sort of the being a city of over 500 miles of waterfront, right? And so resiliency is also a key sector within the green economy. And so with that as a framework, we right now in New York City have about 133,000 jobs in the green economy. Those 8 sectors, we break them down into a bit more granularity. So, you know, there's 21 subsectors. I'm not going to list all of them down, but across those 21 subsectors, we have about 133,000 jobs now. And probably to no one's surprise, building decarbonization jobs are a huge portion of that. So right now, there's over 60,000 jobs in that space. So that's almost 50% of the green economy, and that's projected to grow in size to over 150,000 jobs by 2040. So that's nearly tripling from our current size. We know that those new jobs that will come online, about 70% of those are transitioning jobs, right? So jobs, plumbing jobs, for example, where those folks who are trained in those trades will be installing heat pumps, right? Or like, you know, various kind of building construction roles, that construction installation roles that will really be transitioning to a focus on green building.
Wow, that's amazing. So 60,000 jobs today, 50% of the green economy in buildings. I have to assume, is that the largest sector of the green economy? Jobs?
That's right. It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So the report identifies 7 marquee initiatives, which is amazing. It's backed up by 62 actions. So when the audience takes a look at the report, you'll see it's very thorough. I want to focus on 4 in particular for our conversation today. So let's start with, can you tell us about the circular construction guidelines that are in the report? Where is EDC going with that category?
Yeah. So we're super excited about our circular construction guidelines. So that it's first of all 63 actions.
Oh no, you
but
did one more since I did my script.
So we did one more. But you know, each of those actions really roll up to one of 5 goals around decarbonizing buildings and construction, around transportation, around enabling low carbon alternatives in the transportation sector, developing renewable energy system, catalyzing innovation in climate technologies, and building an equitable green economy ecosystem. So those are kind of our 5 goals, right? And so the circular construction guidelines really rolls up to our vision for how we will decarbonize buildings and construction, right? So we all know New York City is already a national leader in sustainability and green infrastructure. We have, you know, 100%, a commitment to 100% clean carbon neutrality by 2050. And we also are committed to reducing embodied carbon emissions for new city buildings, infrastructure, and major retrofits by 50%. And so the city plays a really powerful role in paving the way to decarbonize the built environment and scale clean construction, particularly with if we want to actually get at these embodied carbon reductions. And so the circular construction guidelines are an operational guide to reducing carbon reduction, to reducing embodied carbon. And it lays out a number of strategies. It lays out kind of a framework for collecting data about what current practices look like in construction projects, around material diversion, reuse, and recycling. We are really excited because these circular construction guidelines, we're putting them out with the hopes of really shifting the market and creating demand for circular construction products and practices, and the reuse of and recycling of materials. But because we are such in and of ourselves a huge market mover, right? Like I mentioned, we have a $9 billion capital portfolio. We are uniquely positioned to also walk the talk and actually apply that circular construction guidelines to our own capital projects. And so, we've made some real commitments in the guidelines about EDC's own capital projects. We want to reduce C&D waste by 75% for all projects. We want to reuse and recycle a minimum of 95% of the discarded concrete and soil generated by construction or deconstruction projects. And we want to ensure that at least 25% of all materials used on a project are low carbon. And so the guidelines, and so these are the goals that we have established for ourselves. And we want to see these guidelines be adopted and deployed industry-wide, and sort of see goals established by other agencies, by the private sector. So that's kind of what the guidelines are. We're now requiring that entities that are working with EDC take into consideration the circular construction guidelines as they work for us as a construction manager or engage in any of our development projects.
Thank you. So, embodied carbon is so important. It's actually part of our conference that I'm going to talk about at the end of our program here. But maybe we could just spend another minute on that. How big an issue is embodied carbon from your standpoint?
Yeah. So huge. Buildings are responsible for almost 70% of New York City's total greenhouse gas emissions and operational carbon, right? But construction and demolition waste represents up to roughly 60% of the local solid waste waste stream, right? And we, when we look at, let's see, there's a stat that is always like very jarring to me that I want to make sure I mention here. I'm losing it, but when we look at just the opportunity, we're so often focused almost exclusively on operational carbon, but embodied carbon will both impact our waste streams and also really bring down, help to drive decarbonization efforts as well.
Great. So on to another topic here. You're planning a new climate innovation hub that is detailed in the report. What can we expect is going to happen there?
Yeah, so this is a hub that is going to be established at the Brooklyn Army Terminal in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, where, as I mentioned earlier, we manage over 200 acres of waterfront property on behalf of the city. And our vision there is that kind of portfolio of assets would increasingly be activated to support climate innovation. So on the north, we have the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which is being activated to support offshore wind staging and assembly, any interconnection of that renewable energy into the grid. Excuse me. And to the south of sort of that campus or that portfolio of assets is the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which is a 60-acre campus that's right now in a really advanced manufacturing industrial campus. We have nearly 4 million square feet of real estate there that is tenanted by over 120 businesses, who are doing all sorts of things, from making springs to engaging in the reuse of cloth and in order to also support the green economy and as part of the green economy, right? And so given the waterfront position of the Brooklyn Army Terminal, given a program that we launched there in the fall of last year called Pilots at Bat, and some of the trends that we've been seeing around the needs of climate tech companies across any number of sectors, whether it's in the building sector or renewables, we have committed to and just launched an RFP the beginning of last week to build a climate innovation hub that will do three things. It's going to grow the local climate tech ecosystem by developing the facilities needed by the industry. And so we are envisioning advanced manufacturing labs. We're envisioning potentially wet labs. We could see, folks working on all sorts of bio-based innovations, right? So turning various like bio-based materials into wearable fabrics. We could see the development of drone-based technologies to support solar installation, any number of kind of climate tech uses. And so we want facilities that will help to support that. We want to accelerate the commercialization of climate technologies through business growth and piloting programs. And so we want an operator who will offer programs to the startups and incumbent businesses that are in the space to help them with customer acquisition, to help them with securing financing, securing investors, right? So there'll be like a really strong programmatic piece. And then finally, because this is a flagship investment coming out of the Green Economy Action Plan and our commitments there, as I shared that vision before around really ensuring a just transition as well, we want to ensure that we're building shared prosperity for New Yorkers to advance a just transition. And so what that means is we seek a workforce component as part of this climate innovation hub. There's so many, particularly in the green economy, workforce training opportunities that really require some like big industrial spaces to whether it's training people on heat pumps installation or any number of uses, right? And so we want to see a workforce component as part of the hub that could connect people to the businesses in the hub or to other opportunities in the green economy elsewhere. And then the last thing I'll say is we know that this is a audacious vision to try to build this climate innovation hub. And so we're interested in consortiums of partners coming together to propose, a vision that aligns with and builds off of the cities.
Right. So let's continue down that road on workforce. So one of your other marquee initiatives is around green training facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what will those be? How will they work?
Yeah. So in the plan, we commit to establishing a green training facility in every borough. And the first one is really going to be created as part of the climate exchange on Governor's Island. And the idea here is, again, I was mentioning earlier that, many of the occupations in the green economy, particularly those in the kind of construction and installation space, or even like engineering and architecture, really require physical space to sort of do them well. And so this green training facility vision is really being shepherded by the Mayor's Office of Workforce and Talent. And the hope here is to kind of co-locate where possible these training facilities with other investments that are being made throughout the city.
Great. And so you have a whole nother initiative around energy. What does that look like?
Yeah. So lots that we're trying to do in energy. As I mentioned, we have our focus on supporting the offshore wind industry and really landing in New York City. We've been doing a lot around ensuring we have the port infrastructure to support this industry. We've been investing in workforce programs and business development programs. But one thing that is really so not necessarily new, but something that we are wanting to shine more light on is the need for battery storage. So if we're going to really have a just transition to a clean energy future, it will require energy storage systems to balance supply and demand, by creating safe, more efficient, and resilient energy grid. And so we are leveraging the New York City Industrial Development Agency, IDA, to lower the cost of capital investments through discretionary tax incentives to green economy kind of projects like battery storage projects. So far, we've already supported the deployment of over 200 megawatts of battery storage capacity in New York City. Our goal as a city is 500 megawatts by 2025. So this is a really crucial financial product for supporting the growth of that industry. And so, we're really bringing to bear, whether it's our real estate assets as we're doing the Climate Innovation Hub, or the incentives that we can offer through IDA, or a capital portfolio, and really bring that to bear to support circular construction advancement, where the Green Economy Action Plan is really using all of the levers that the city has available to drive the growth of this industry.
Excellent. So the report identifies, I think it's 21 focus occupations, right? Like we didn't get another one in there. It's 21. So I got this number right. So the report identifies 21 focus occupations that will be crucial for the green economy. So give us a flavor. What are those 21 occupations, and how do we actually get to those jobs?
Yeah. So we call these focus occupations for a couple of reasons. One, they're like unique or critical to the green economy. They have a significant presence in the green economy now, or will in the future. And they're forecasted to increase in demand, which we think is really important, right? Because we have to be sort of future focused. And then finally, these 21 occupations already provide a family sustaining wage or put people on a pathway to it, right? And so about half of them don't require a college degree. And so when we think about kind of the range of New Yorkers across various educational levels, we're excited about these focus occupations being able to represent opportunity for New Yorkers at the broad spectrum. And so they cut across kind of construction and installation, right? There's so much infrastructure and building that has to happen as part of the green economy. So there's a lot in that space. We're talking about facilities managers, HVAC mechanics and installers, electricians. There's occupations in the engineering and architecture space, mechanical engineers. There's occupations in management, construction managers, and then, of course, in business, sustainability specialists. And so, in the report, we really map out all 21 of these and provide some analysis on what are the demographic trends that we're seeing with these focus occupations, what are the opportunities we're seeing, and in particular for workforce organizations who are keen to really invest in training New Yorkers for these occupations. We have a bit of a compendium that goes into even deeper detail on mapping out pathways to these jobs from any number of entry points. But, for many of them, there's pathways through apprenticeships with unions or enrolling in trade schools, followed by on-the-job experience. One of the things that the report also does, which is I think exciting and useful, is lays out how New Yorkers who are interested in the green economy and these focus occupations in particular can connect to them.
Great. So let's take a step back outside of the report and just from a bigger picture perspective. How does EDC think about building decarbonization overall?
Yeah. So, the city plays a really powerful role, right, in paving the way to decarbonize our built environment. And so, we think that there's a couple of unique ways that we at EDC are well positioned to do this, right? So there's, as I mentioned before, how are we thinking about the portfolio of capital projects that we are engaged in developing, our own capital projects, right? So I hear to taking a step back, and so I'll take the step back, but I also say the plan also like digs into
Sure.
this, where we are engaged in a strategic energy master plan around our assets to think about precisely this for the assets that we control, right? The circular construction guidelines is also a way to help structure how we think about sustainable building materials and carbon emissions, albeit embodied carbon emissions in our building portfolio as we continue to build. But beyond those sort of like kind of like very real estate heavy ways we think about it, we're also think a lot about how we can enable innovative solutions, how we can facilitate policies and operate pilot programs to overcome implementation challenges to building decarbonization. So, for example, we have a piloting program called Pilots at Bat, and that is one of the predecessors for part of why we're building the Climate Innovation Hub at BAT at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. But that program is focused on, creating a platform for climate tech companies writ large, but we've seen a lot of interest from prop tech companies, companies that are really interested in addressing energy use in our buildings, companies that are really wanting to scale building decarbonization solutions. And so we've seen that we can also leverage our, it's not just sort of in our own building, but in even how we are like managing and making and programming our assets, we can ensure that we're trying to help spur the building decarbonization field a little bit more by supporting innovation.
Great, thank you. I just have a couple more questions for Nse, then we're going to turn to the audience. So please I see some great questions coming in already. Nse, what jobs are best positioned for the green economy, particularly for building decarbonization? If you had to pick a couple that you think are both crucial and are going to be growing, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, like, HVAC mechanics, right, who are, are well positioned to support the deployment of heat pumps. I think about electricians, also similarly very well positioned. One of the focus occupations we call out to is around like energy auditors and sustainability specialists. Like, I think these are some of the roles that are particularly crucial for building decarbonization. And
Great.
they're, roles that are growing in demand. So that's great.
Yes. My last question, then we'll go to some of the audience one is there a mechanism to track, like, so remind me of the numbers. Our green economy jobs right now are at what, like what did you say?
Like 133,000. Yeah, 2021 number.
133, and we want to go to you said is
around 400,000. Yeah.
400. Yeah, that's great. Is there
by 2040?
Right. Is there a mechanism to track that, or does EDC plan to update the report as we move forward in time? How do we know if we're getting to where we want to go?
If we're getting, yeah. So I think, we certainly want to track how close we're getting to that vision. For the methodology geeks on the line, like the methodology to get to these numbers is really, really robust, and we spent a year working on this report. And so we think that, it's how often we update these numbers is something that we're like still thinking about. Again, the goal is 2040 because it is really going to kind of require the next 15 years to be able to get to these full projections. And so, so we're sort of thinking through what it looks like to track proximity to that numerical goal, where we have been a lot more decisive in building systems for tracking delivery on the actions, right, that are discussed in the plan, because in order to get to the vision, we have to really see delivery on the actions that are laid out. And so there's, you know, lots of systems internally, systems across city government to track progress on those.
Got it. Okay, let's turn to some of the audience questions. They're great. Please keep them coming. First one's around kind of the future of architecture. It's a great question. You know, let me paraphrase here a little bit. So, and say, how does the green economy plan redefine what it means to be an architect in terms of services that are offered? Or have you envisioned, you know, how is the profession going to change? What new skills and services will be needed to get to that green economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, we took a fairly like kind of macro view in the plan, and so didn't quite dive in that way on some of these particular occupations. But for sure, you know, even just thinking more about sustainable building materials, I think will be like a really critical way that we need the field of architecture to change in order to be a
Particularly
real
from embodied carbon, right?
Yeah, exactly. In order to be a real force multiplier for the green economy. And so, you know, the circular construction guidelines really goes into a lot of what that could look like in terms of like, you know, different materials that we might consider, ways we might think about tracking, sort of the metrics piece too, right? Of like, what is, you know, what are we currently using in our buildings, and how do we put in place systems to be able to track proximity to our goals?
Got it. Okay. Next question around affordability. How does affordability or lack of affordability in New York City play into the new green economy?
That's an interesting question. I mean, there's so many ways one could take that. I think one, you know, part of why we were so focused on identifying opportunities in the green economy, workforce opportunities in particular, that you know, are accessible to a broad range of New Yorkers, and that pay, you know, family sustaining wages, is in part because we're like keenly aware of that kind of affordability, household affordability issue. And so that's one of the ways that that's sort of intersecting there. Yeah, I think that there's also, yeah, maybe I'll just stop there. But
Yep.
welcome, if that doesn't answer the question, welcome you to drop in one that's more specific too.
Yep. Okay. Next one, is the city considering new workforce pathways or apprenticeships of new jobs in some form?
Yeah, absolutely. So the city is very committed to increasing and scaling the number of apprenticeships. And so, yes, all of this like sort of analysis on these different occupations is like informing everything from how New York City Public Schools is thinking about their kind of career pathway programming, to the apprenticeship programs that the mayor's Office of Workforce and Talent is sort of spearheading and pushing forward on.
Yeah, maybe just building on that a little bit in the area of training. Does the report identify, or do you in your role see the need? Like, what are the immediate best training needs for a green economy? Like, what training programs do you think we need to scale first and fastest?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that as I mentioned, so there's the plan, and then there's like a compendium that has like goes into a lot deeper depth on the like workforce components, really digging into each of the focus occupations. And one of the things that we do there is really map out what types of skills are needed for the roles that are articulated as growing in demand and as being kind of core to the industry. I think it like really depends on the role, but like that's a resource I can sort of share with folks. You know, after this, I can share it with the Urban Green Live, and you can distribute. But yeah, it really depends on kind of the role. We launched a program. We have a program at EDC called Construct NYC, where we work with MWBE contractors who are wanting to be a part of, delivering on this massive capital construction portfolio that we have as EDC. And one of the ways that we've tried to make that program more responsive to shifts we're seeing in the green economy is actually integrating GPRO, which you all know well, into that curriculum as a sort of a first initial step. But we think that, it really will require, if there are firms that want to be on the leading edge of like circular construction, there's going to have to be a lot deeper training that firm goes into around circularity audits, for example, right? So we think that there's kind of it's specific, or if we're talking about, firms that want to play a role in offshore wind, Global Wind Organization certification is going to be really important, right? So the certifications really differ based on the subsectors of interest, but one of the as we've done that analysis for ourselves, like we've definitely integrated GPRO as like one fundamental piece, one foundational piece.
Excellent, and thank you. Next question here is the goal to eventually have all new construction and major alterations meet LEED or EGCC standards?
I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So I'm not gonna speak out of turn.
Right.
But I could get back to folks on that.
Great. Okay, next two questions are around environmental justice. How does the green economy plan incorporate environmental justice? And then the next question is about what's the role of EJ groups in the green economy? How do you see EDC working with EJ groups with the report, the rollout of the report?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned in sort of the vision for the plan, ensuring justice is part of how we're thinking about the vision for the plan, right? For New Yorkers, we don't want to just get to these 400,000 jobs without really thinking about kind of the values embedded in all of this, right? We want to, like I said, this green economy sector to be the anchor of a prosperous, equitable, and just future for New Yorkers, right? And so that's really important. We, in the plan, call out the importance of environmental justice communities and the roles that EJ leadership has played oftentimes in even making way for a number of these green economy opportunities to really come to the fore. I think, having spent a number of years working on offshore wind, I think a lot about that as like a specific example, but I think particularly in Sunset Park, but I think that there's, other examples as well. The second part of the question was,
so what's the role of EJ groups? How do you see yourself working with EJ groups as you develop the green economy?
Yeah. I mean, I think so much of the green economy is about place-based investments. And so, given that environmental justice groups are often responding to kind of place-based injustices and realities, right? Like our neighborhood bound, not to say that there's not kind of networks that are citywide, but given that sort of place-based focus, when we are thinking about green economy investments in particular neighborhoods, and particularly in environmental justice neighborhoods, we're very mindful and trying to be very mindful of the priorities of those EJ communities and the history of those EJ communities as we try to work together to figure out best fit between, whatever the kind of green economy investment is proposed as in that place.
Next question here is, what do you see as the biggest overarching challenge to creating a green economy?
The biggest overarching challenge.
What's
I
the
think
first
there's,
roadblock you need to knock down and say?
what's the first roadblock I need to knock down? Um, I mean, I think that like there's really like increasingly unlikely collaborations we need to see, right? So even just following on the point of the question we were just talking about with regards to environmental justice groups, right? Like really bringing to the table environmental justice groups who have often showed leadership on what investments in their communities to look like as it pertains to the green economy, with the financing partners who have the, deep pockets to help advance that, with the like industry experts who have the sort of sector specific experiences and nuance, perhaps from like other markets or jurisdictions. I think like figuring out that collaborative piece is big and important. I think also, 10, 15 years ago, we had the big like green jobs hysteria, excitement that I think a lot of people would say didn't actually translate to a lot of green jobs materializing. I think we're going about it differently now because we're thinking about how are we training people alongside how are we building the businesses that will actually absorb that will actually, be creating the demand for these new workers who are being trained in these skills. But, there's perhaps still some kind of scars or apprehension about that. And so, making clear the ways in which this focus on the green economy is like different than like past attempts to like build green jobs, I think can be sometimes I think that comes up. And then I think also, sorry, lastly,
Mhm.
because again, like green economy is about, a lot of green economy investments are about like large scale, or can be about large scale infrastructure investments that happen in place. There's sometimes some like pushback or kind of NIMBYism that comes up that, we have to be mindful of and proceed respectfully, but that can be a big challenge too.
Right. Speaking of NIMBY and just polarization overall, the next question is, what are talking points to people who are in opposition to a greener economy?
Yeah. Um, I mean, in some ways, part of why we really lift up the economic impacts that we see this growth of the green economy happening is because that feels often like something folks can connect to, across political lines, something that folks can fundamentally really value, right? And so when we talk about like the number of jobs that will be created in the green economy, when we talk about the fact that right now the green economy contributes about I want to say around $30 billion to New York City's economy by 2040, that will be nearly 90 billion. That like that threefold increase, like is pretty compelling, right? When we think about what that can mean for the lives of everyday New Yorkers. And I think that same framework abstracted at sort of a national scale also plays out.
Yep. Okay, next question around embodied carbon. How would building material manufacturers ensure their products meet the low carbon requirements for your projects?
Yeah. How would building materials manufacturers make sure that
Or I guess
well,
if, yeah, if you're going to require, if you're going to have, first of all, let's back up. Maybe you can help unpack how will that embodied carbon requirement work for EDC projects? And
mhm.
then I guess how are materials qualified so they are low carbon, low embodied carbon materials that you would use?
Yeah, well, as part of what so one like first and foremost, really just encourage folks to check out the circular construction guidelines because it like lays a lot of this out. But we are as part of that process, really are thinking about kind of a suite of different operational practices that would need to be adopted, right? And it sort of starts fundamentally with just a metrics and analysis of the like composition, right? And so alongside that does come a focus too on material declarations and being able to actually articulate that in order to inform the types of choices that we can make.
Got it. And I think we have time for one more question. So here's a question about training, union versus non-union. The unionized community has strong training programs, and sometimes the non-union community doesn't have access to training. So do you see this imbalance, and does the plan think about that imbalance, or how the training might work out for union versus non-union? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't get into like at the level of sort of the actions that we're committing to. We don't get into, for specifically the workforce actions, many of those are in much earlier stage. And so we haven't gotten into like defining whether they're like union or non-union opportunities. And so I think that there's lots of room for consideration of both. In the analytical piece, where we kind of like lay out what the workers in the sector look like across different occupations. Like we do look at, areas where there's particularly high union density and areas where there isn't. But the plan, I would say, is really tries to cover both.
Right. So time for one more question, and I'll take the moderator liberty of being mine. So this is an audience of building professionals. What's your charge to us? What's your hope for us as we think through the green economy? What do you want us to do to get to the green economy?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that we maybe haven't talked too much about just yet is, New York City, we're really, New York City is so well positioned, right, with the Climate Mobilization Act and Local Law 97 and the ways in which we are creating sort of the policy infrastructure to support building decarbonization. And I think that we're increasingly trying to create throughout various parts of the city apparatus, not just the policy infrastructure, but the funding, resourcing, the workforce, the support, the like entire ecosystem to really deliver on the promise of something like Local Law 97. And so I think my maybe call to this probably very assorted group of building professionals is to kind of think creatively and innovatively about the ways that we might connect the dots, right? So, the Green Economy Action Plan, as I mentioned before, has a whole pillar focused on how we're advancing climate tech innovation, right? And oftentimes there is some concern that like the innovations aren't there yet, right, to help us get at the scale of building decarbonization that we want to get at. But like we don't believe that that's true, right? And so that's why we're both focused on, decarbonizing our built environments while we're also saying like we're going to continue to support the acceleration of climate technologies, right? So like let's think creatively about how to connect the dots across all these different opportunities. New York City is such a leader in many spaces, and I think the more we can pull down silos around how we're thinking about the opportunity, the better, the more progress we can make.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to have to leave it there. But Nse, thank you so much for this really informative discussion. Congratulations on the report. We're really happy that you could spend some time with Urban Green and our audience today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was a real pleasure.
Great. Excellent. We have some really great upcoming programs that we want to talk to you about. I promise you spring is coming, and the first harbinger of that is the Urban Green Spring Member Reception. It's a little chill in the air out there today, but next week is April already, and on April 3rd, we'll have our Spring Member Reception at SOM in Financial District. They're beautiful offices, 6 to 8 p.m. We have to close registration on this soon this week, so if you'd like to attend, please jump on our website and register. Spring member reception is always a great time to do networking with fellow Urban Green members. Learn the latest. We'll provide an update on our work and what you need to know for this quarter. So that's coming up next week. Then on June 3rd, we have our annual conference, New York City Next, where we're going to dive into 3 big trends for the year that'll be shaping sustainability in buildings and our net zero climate future. Those 3 trends are AI in construction. Will it be disruption or will it be dud? Our second topic is going to be hot water heat pumps turning up to heat pump on hot water. Check out our cool titles on our website. And our third topic, as we talked earlier today with Nse, is about embodied carbon, that it's here to stay, and what all the considerations around that. And we heard some great ones today. So join us for our conference, AI in construction, hot water heat pump acceleration, and embodied carbon, June 3rd, 1 to 5 p.m. at NYU. The registration site is up. That also sells out. So if you want to attend and get your spot, I'd encourage you to register soon. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Hope to see you at another Urban Green Live or one of our events. And until then, everybody have a healthy and safe day. Thank you.